For the first 30 stores, it was all me and nobody else. Every dollar I made, I invested back into the branding, the website, the displays, the construction, the signage program.
That's Charles Bonfiglio, founder and CEO of Tint World. In our conversation, he brings us through the full journey as an entrepreneur, including the recent private equity investment he just took on.
We got like 142 PE firms that were interested in our company. I got 20 times EBITDA. I wanted to get that 20 times. It costs you nothing to be nice to people, and it comes back tenfold if you do the right thing. I bought a one-way plane ticket, took 2 suitcases of everything I had, and flew down to Florida by myself. A lot of franchisees misconceive marketing as an expense, not an investment for ROI.
This episode is presented by Cloud Kitchens. More on them later. I know you skipped college entirely, and I believe the first business you owned was a clothing factory in Brooklyn.
Correct.
So can you tell us how that even came about?
You know, as a young guy, my father owned a clothing factory in Brooklyn, where he had sewing machines and, cutting machines and a pattern, table. And so he worked for companies like Norma Kamali, Jeffrey Bean, Calvin Klein. So as a kid growing up, I started, 12 years old, sweeping the floors. Got a little older, I started to learn how to fix the sewing machines, knew every so often how to clean, change the bobbins and the needles and the belts. And from that point, I went on to learning other parts of the business, like pattern making. And so I learned how to make patterns. So I did, these big companies like Norma Kamali would send us these patterns, which are like on oak tag, and their shapes. And you have to lay out the fabric on these big tables and, put this paper on top of it and staple it into the fabric, and then put these patterns on. So trace them out. And so over the time, and then eventually we had to bag the clothes, ship the clothes out to Secaucus, New Jersey, where their warehouses were. So I learned the business through my dad. And when I got out of high school, I'm like, I never thought about college. I thought college at the time was for lawyers and doctors and people that were going to be some professional, that needed that. But my father was an entrepreneur, and I just okay, I'll just do that. So my father basically told me at 18 years old, he said, listen, Charles, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know, Dad. He goes, well, I got this one location over here that I'm moving to a bigger location. If you want, he goes, I got so much work. I do all the high-end stuff. You can do all the stuff from Kmart and Walmart, and I'll just phone all to. I said, okay. So I got some sewing machines. I hired a couple of girls from the neighborhood, mostly women. Women used to, like to, come in late so the kids could go up to school and leave around 3 o'clock so they can see their kids after school. That's the way they were at that time. So I just got friendly with all of them. And, my father taught me 2 things, how to work with my hands and how to work with people. Those are the 2 most skills that he taught me. And from there, I just learned all the ins and outs from his business. So I opened up a clothing factory, and I told my dad, I said, but I'm not going to do this unless I can build my own designer line. I said, I want to be like Calvin Klein on that billboard. I want to do, why can't we do that? Why do we have to make clothes for them? And my dad was like, well, Charles, that's something, I learned this from my dad. And, if you want to do that, you're going to have to learn that on your own. I don't know that business. So I said, okay. But he helped me a little bit. I put an ad in the Women's Wear Daily. I got this girl, Christine, who actually was a designer for Norma Kamali, and she was trying to make her own name. So I, don't ask me where I learned this, but I used to get the TA magazines because I had a Trans Am. And in the back, they used to have all these listings, how to trademark your name. So I'm going to trademark my name. So I trademarked the name G-Force Missy Wear. G-Force was the brand, and Missy Wear was the young female clothes that I was really good at designing for other companies. So I designed my own clothing line, and that's when I started to realize I don't know what I don't know. I know what I know, I don't know what I don't know. So what happened was, I said, so after I designed the line, my father goes, wow, this is beautiful. This is great. I said, yeah, Dad, I made shirts, sweaters, hats, pants, shorts. I made a full line, and
it's all for women.
All for women, all for young. Missy Wear is like teenage to 20 years old, hip stuff. And so I said, Dad, what do I do now? He goes, now you got to go sell it. Dad, I don't know how to sell this. He goes, well, listen, you go make appointments with Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's, Bamberger's, all these places in New York, and they have a certain day of the week that they see all these the buyers, they see all the people that are selling. I said, okay. So like I'm like 18, 19 years old. I get this baguette and I'm carrying the stuff. I go there and I'm sitting in the waiting room to go in with all these really executive guys with suits and all and I'm a young guy. I'm already intimidated. But they Charles Bonfiglio, come on in here. So I go in and I show my line. Yeah, really good line, kid. Really nice. I'll let you know. Like they didn't buy it because I wasn't a brand yet. I was just starting out. They liked the line, but you're not going to buy from me yet. So after a few weeks of that, maybe a month or so of going up to New York every other day, I go, Dad, I just don't think they're ready for me yet, or I'm not ready for them. And he goes, well, Charles, maybe I shouldn't have sent you to New York. Maybe you should go to like some of the places out in like Secaucus, New Jersey, where like you have, Bambergers. They're not a top level, brand, but this is the fashion capital of the world in New York. Maybe you got to go somewhere else. I said, okay. So I made a appointment with the girl in Bambergers in New Jersey. It happened to be I walked in with my garment line bag, and it wanted to be the girl just graduated, college for design and to be a buyer for the company. And I actually, from that point, I walked in and I felt like I had more of like she was younger, she was more closer to my age. I felt like I had a rapport with her, but she saw my stuff. She goes, I love this. This is great stuff. And after like, I don't know, less than an hour talking with her, she took out this form. She goes, I'm going to do you a solid. I'm going to actually make an order for you. She goes, but if I make this order, remember, this is the order that you're going to have to probably double down on next season, because I'm going to open it to more stores, and you have to make the displays for our stores and all that other stuff. I'm like, okay. So she writes down the order. I didn't even know what she was writing down. She just wrote it all down. I said, thank you so much. I'll make you proud. I walk downstairs. I go into my car in the parking lot, put my garment bag away, and I look at the order. I go, crap, it's $1 million order. I'm blown away. I'm like, now you're talking about in 1981, 82? I'm like, oh, wow. So I actually, I couldn't wait to get home. At that time, there's no cell phone, so I drove home like crazy. I go into my house. My father's at the table, my family, my father, my sister. I walk in and I go, here, and I throw the order on the table. We're rich. And my father goes, what do you think? I said, I got $1 million order. My father goes, takes the paper of the bag. He actually got $1 million order. And then he turns it over, and all the fine print was in the back, so he starts reading it. And of course, you don't get paid till 90 days after you ship it there. If for some reason it doesn't sell, they can send the stuff back or discount it, and all these other things that I didn't know about. But meanwhile, I never thought about that. Even if I go to make $1 million worth of product, I'm going to have $500,000 in payroll and equipment, payroll and labels and bagging and shipping and making the material and doing everything. So I'm like, how am I going to get this money? I didn't have no $500,000. I didn't think about it. I started to build the Barragano Bridge over the water, and I didn't think that you got to build the other half first. So I didn't think of the back end of the business. So with that, I go, Dad, what do I do? He goes, I don't know. So my father takes me to Chase Bank. We sit with the guy in Chase Bank, and he says to me, well, yeah, we have something able to lend you money for this, but it's called factoring. He goes, so we'll lend you the money, but you got to pay us like 10% a month of that money until we get paid. I go, like a loan shark. He goes, well, not quite. He goes, it's not weekly, but like I'm from Brooklyn. What do I know? So
yeah,
I go, yeah. He goes, and we're going to have your dad sign his house or whatever assets he has, for security. I'm like, no. I said, Dad, I didn't do this for you to risk your life. I did this for me. And I was very conscientious of not ever putting my family into concerning. I didn't know any better. So we left the bank, and I told Dad, no, we're not doing this. My father was, he wasn't sure either. He loved the line, but that was big for him too. So after about a week, I said, Dad, what should I do? He goes, well, Charles, you should call the girl and tell her I can't fulfill this order. You want to leave off good with her, so in the future, if you can, you always have good relationships. That's your most important thing. So I did that, and she was thankful that I called her. She was cool about it. We canceled the order. And then I'm like, Dad, what do I do now? So he goes, now, Charles, instead of going to these big players, maybe you ought to go to all the mom and pop stores in Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, and go and sell to them. He goes, but if they don't want to buy because you're a new line, go put it on consignment. He goes, go buy some racks on 3rd Avenue and some of these warehouses. You can buy them. Put them in the van that we use to ship the clothes and put some stuff in there. And walk in and say, listen, I'm going to give you this stuff on consignment. I'll give you, styles and stuff, and I'll put it on the rack by the register. If you leave the rack by the register, I'll come back once a week. Whatever you sell, you pay me, and I'll restock. So I did that for the season. I sold everything out that I had. I think I made about $30,000 in sales. And I realized I had to go now for the next season to do another designer line. So I learned real quick that, just because you're creative and smart in some ways, you need to know the back end of the business. And I didn't really plan for that. So that's how I started in business. And that's a little bit of story right there. I can go on from there, but I just wanted to give you the overview of how I learned you need to know more than just the front end.
Instead of opening your newest location next year, what if you could open it next quarter? Turns out you can, which is why franchise operators are turning to today's sponsor, Cloud Kitchens. Cloud Kitchens provides move-in ready restaurant real estate in high-demand delivery markets, enabling operators to launch new delivery-first locations in as little as 8 weeks for just the cost of the equipment. So rather than spend a year on construction, permitting, and build-outs, you can invest a fraction of the capital and get open in just a few months. And the results are telling. National brands like Chick-fil-A, Wingstop, Starbucks, Goop Kitchen are using Cloud Kitchens to expand faster. If you're thinking about where your next restaurant should be, request a tour via cloudkitchens.com. The link is in the show notes. Well, so is it around that time then, once you kind of understand how the clothing game would work, that you maybe start thinking of alternative business ideas? Like I know at one point you're a co-owner of a pizzeria, but eventually you make your way down to Florida. So yeah, when does that inkling come to, okay, like I'm going to leave the clothing factory behind?
Well, so while I was doing the clothing factory, my sister got engaged to some gentleman who was from Italy, and he was a pizza man, and he told me, I'm working this pizzeria on 32nd Street and Broadway, right around the corner from the Empire State Building. I still had the factory. I was still running the business. Maybe now I'm about 20 years old. And he says, listen, Charles, I don't have enough money to buy this thing. Would you go partners with me? So I had the factory, and my sister was engaged from now. So I told my sister, can you cover the business for me during the day on certain times, and I'll go run the pizzeria with him. So I bought the pizzeria with him. We ran it for about a year, and then the lease had to renew, and the landlord didn't want to renew the lease for us because the restaurant next door, the bar next door, wanted to expand, and they had more money. So what happened? So I ended the pizzeria deal. We made money for the year that I was there. Don't get me wrong, we did well, but I didn't extend it. So I realized at that time I was falling into business after high school from what either my father did or what a brother-in-law wanted me to do. I never really went and said, I'm going to do what I want. So I actually thought about that. At least I was smart enough to realize I want to do something I want. And as a young guy, I had the coolest cars. I used to go to Crazy Eddie's and buy car stereos and upgrade my car stereo. I had neighbors that wanted me to do it, friends. Didn't do it for money. I had a friend that an older brother at a car stereo shop. I spent the weekends there just hanging around and helping him. Hey, Charles, put the speakers in for me. Hey, Charles, sell this guy a stereo unit. So I learned a lot. So at that point, I thought, you know what? I really like that. And I didn't want to do it in New York and Brooklyn. I felt like if you go to New York and Brooklyn, you always got, Tony Montana coming in, knocking on your door, say, pay me some protection. And I wanted to get out of that whole element of Brooklyn. So I went and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm going to give the factory to Adele, my sister. And, the pizzeria was gone. I said, so I'm going to move to Florida and I'm going to open up my own car stereo shop and aftermarket accessory business. I said, that's what I love. And it's something that you never did, something that nobody, I just think that I'd be good at that. And so he says, okay. So I actually sold my car. I had an 82 Corvette at the time. 81 Corvette. Red interior was customized. It was beautiful. I sold that. I sold my weight equipment. I sold everything I had, and I collected my money, and I went down to Florida with around $30,000 more or less dollars, and I just wanted to conserve money. So I bought a one-way plane ticket, took 2 suitcases of everything I had, and flew down to Florida by myself. First night, a couple of nights, I slept in the rent-a-car, and from that point, I found a 1-bedroom apartment. And then I basically bought a 4-year-old 40 XP, which is a far cry from where I was coming from, a cool Corvette. But I wanted to conserve my money, so I spent a couple of $1,000s. And that's how I started. As soon as I got into that mode of having an old car and a one-bedroom apartment, I started looking around for locations for my business. I found a location which was an auto center that was just being built or just finished being built in Hollandale Beach Boulevard. And I went into the landlord and I said, look, you got a precision tune, a Jiffy Lube, a Lee Miles transmission. I want to get that end cap. I want to put a car stereo shop in there. And the landlord said to me, I'm sorry, we only lease to brands. I'm like, but I'm going to build a brand. I know what I'm doing. I had businesses in New York. I'm just new down there. I know what I'm doing. He goes, no, I'm sorry. We only use brands. Didn't understand what he meant by that. But I respected it, and I said thank you, and I left. And I figured, let me go to the bank. Let me see if I can go to the bank and get a loan, because I only have $30,000. My business plan called for $80,000 to invest into this business. And I walked into the bank at Wells Fargo, where my money was, and I said, I got money in your bank, and I want to get a loan to start this business. Here's my business plan. And you're like, I'm sorry, we don't lend money for startups. I'm like, well, how do you get started if you don't lend money for startups? And so at that point, I realized I was in a quagmire. I didn't know exactly what to do. So I basically said, let me get a job in a car stereo shop. I never worked for anybody other than my father and building my own business. So I got a job in a car stereo shop, figuring I would meet installers that when I need them to open my business, and I would learn, where do I buy, what's the distributors, where do I buy product, how does things work. I would learn a little more. I worked in a company called Sound Advice. It was a pretty big outfit down here in Florida. And so a few months I was working there. They recognized I was really good. They kept on elevating me for the few months I was there. And then my mom calls me up and she says, Charles, we have a family wedding. Why don't you come up for the weekend and meet all your cousins at the wedding? You could see them all. Like, okay, Mom. So a couple weeks later, I flew up to New York and I go to the wedding and I run into a cousin of mine. His name is Roland. And he asked me what I was doing in Florida, and I kind of told him what I just told you. And I said, what are you doing, Roland? He goes, I just bought a Meineke discount muffler franchise. Meineke? That's mufflers? Yeah. I go, you making money with that? He goes, yeah. Him and his brother bought one a year earlier in Eatontown, New Jersey, and now they're working on their second location. They just bought new cars. They just bought townhouses there. He said, we're doing really well. Why don't you, before you go back to Florida, come by and see it. I'd love you to see my business. I said, okay, great. So after I was done speaking with him, I got the information. I went over to my dad at the wedding. I said, Dad, on Monday, would you mind taking a ride over, before I go back? I was going back to Florida on Tuesday. Take a ride, man. I want to see Uncle Cousin Roland's store. So he goes, okay. So we drove out there. I pulled up to the store. It's a 3-bay gas station converted to a Meineke with a Meineke muffler sign smiling on the building. Gravel parking lot, nothing fancy, but they were busy. Cars were going in and out. So I walk in and I start talking to all the technicians. I start talking to my cousin. Lo and behold, we go out to lunch together, and he tells me all about the franchise. What did you get? Why did you buy the franchise? He goes, well, they give you a roadmap, a blueprint, and they help you get real estate to get a location, and they help you get a loan. I'm like, geez, that's exactly what I'm needing. I said, but is there another franchise that does like what I want to do, aftermarket? So he said, I don't know, but here's the business card. If you're interested, give him a call. So on the way back in the car, driving back with my dad, he says, Charles, you might want to take the path of least resistance. He goes, maybe this is not exactly what you want. He goes, but this will help you get there. Then you can build whatever you want once you learn how to, you get set. I said, okay. I said, I wasn't sure, so I went back to Florida. I filled out the paperwork from Meineke, as well as I actually, looked around if there was another business that did aftermarket accessories, and there was nothing. So there was no franchise at that time. So I opened up my first Meineke, and I started dating my wife, now 37 years married. And I told her, once I get my business open, we'll get married. So she was okay. She was going to college down in Florida. And I opened up the business, and I went back to the same landlord that said no to me. And I said, I just got approved for a Meineke discount muffler shop. If they trust me, you should trust me too. I want to open up this car stereo shop. I try to use that as leverage, but to get what I wanted. But he goes, no. We want brands. We'll give you an end cap. We'll give you free rent. I went back to the bank. They said the same thing. Oh, you bought a franchise? Oh, we got special SBA loans. We'll give you financing. So the business was, the banks were going to lend to me if I had a franchise. The landlords were going to rent to me if I had a business brand that they wanted. But without it, I was nothing. It was just me wanting an idea of a business. So I started to understand a little bit more, and lo and behold, I bought my first Meineke franchise. I did pretty well on the first year. And
Charles, how did you? I guess were you motivated to operate that Meineke? Because the way you tell the story, you had the goal of it. It seemed more like a means to an end, where you're going to use Meineke as this eventual way to be able to have the funds and the ability to build the business you really wanted to operate. So how did you? I mean, starting any business, franchise or not, it's still going to take a lot of work. So how did you get the motivation to run this business? If I am right in saying that, like, it didn't sound like you were super excited to get into the Meineke world.
I originally was not but once I opened up the Meineke, I stopped thinking about what I wanted to. I invested the money and the time to this business. I was going to focus on making it successful. And so really what got me motivated, and this is what's great about franchising, we used to get the sales numbers sent to us of all the stores in the chain. And at that time, a top store was I think there was only a couple of stores that did over $1 million. And they were all in the Northeast. And I'm like in the Southeast, in Florida, and there's no snow, there's no salt. People aren't getting exhaust on every year like they do up north with the potholes. So I was like trying to learn, why am I not being able to beat my cousin Roland? I started to get it was like an unspoken competition of being number one. And I'm just internally competitive. I wanted to be a good operator. I did well, but how do I get to number one? And you know what? I actually hired a guy that was working for a Midas store. And I interviewed him. I said, how come I can't do what my cousin's doing in New York? I mean, I got to get to those sales. And he said to me, didn't Meineke tell you? I go, tell me what? Didn't they let you know that there's no exhaust down here like it is up north? There's a fraction of the amount of business because we don't have snow and salt and potholes. And I'm like, no, they never told me that. I go, well, what did you do at Midas? How did they get their numbers up? Because they started adding other services. They started adding alignments and brakes and shocks and tires and batteries and tune-ups and air conditioning service. I'm like, really? I'm like, do you know how to do that? And he goes, well, I know how to do the tune-ups and the air conditioning, but I have a friend that knows this and another friend. I says, well, okay, so I took him down. I sat in my office. Says, I need to know the anatomy of a tune-up. Everything you need from equipment, inventory, what do I stock, what do I buy out, where do I get it, what's my quoting price on the phone when they come in, how do I upsell, what do I sell? And I went that through every service, all the categories. What kind of ASE certifications I need for automotive technicians. So I got all the information from him. I said, okay, I want you to get 3 of your friends that know all these services, including you. And I want to hire them, and I want you to show me how to do it. So I hired these people. I learned from my technicians how to implement all this stuff. And within a year or two, I became number one in the chain. And at that time, there was no point of sale. There was no computer. Everything was written on hand. So Meineke only saw these reports coming. Hey, we got a whiz kid in Florida. He's doing really well. They didn't know why. And I didn't even know that I was doing anything right or wrong. I was just learning how to get better. That's all I did. So I didn't really not want to do. Once I committed to open up the business, I wanted to be the best I can at it. So after about a year into the business, I go to my wife. I go, Jeanette, my wife's named Jeanette, of course. I said, Jeanette, in New York, I had a Corvette. I said, now I'm a couple of years down here. I got the business. We're doing pretty well. I said, I want to go buy a brand new Corvette, get rid of this 40 XP. I said, well, we could try to work together in a nice car, a convertible. And she goes, Charles, I'm doing the book work for you. And you're doing really well. But, you bought us a townhouse. You took us on a honeymoon to Hawaii. I'm really proud of everything you've done. But if you want that, you're going to have to open up another one of these. I'm like, okay. Pick up the phone. I call Meineke. I want another license. So I bought license number 2. And it wasn't even 6 months later that store was doing as good as my first one. I started working it. And it was and I got to tell you, again, from learning, only 2 stores versus only 1 is a different element. You're in the store yourself all the time, and 2, you're managing, people. So I started to learn the only way I was going to really keep that going is I had to pay people on a commission or a bonus so we could all win together. And that was a learning curve. Going to 3 was another learning curve. And yeah. I wound up, keep on expanding on that.
Well, lost my train of thought. So did Meineke corporate ever realize or have a problem with the expanded services you were doing that maybe weren't in their quote unquote playbook?
Well, that's a really good question. So in late 80s, early, because I started my first Meineke in 1983. So that by the time I got to my second one, I was doing really well. They didn't know what I was doing, why I was doing it, because they didn't see it. By the time I went to open my third store, I said, well, I didn't really go to open my third store. I went on to an annual convention with Meineke, and I started speaking to other Meineke franchisees, and I met a group, a father and son group, that were on their fourth one. And they go, yeah, we're buying all our locations and we're building them and leasing them to the franchise. And so when they do that, then I said, well, why are you doing that? Isn't it just easier to lease it? And he goes, yeah, but after the 15-year franchise agreement, we could turn around and pay off all our property and then sell the business and collect rent forever and not have to, and we just have free money coming in forever. I like that. So I went over to my wife. I'm like, I want to do that. And again, she said, Charles, we're doing really good with the first store and the second store, but if you want to do something like that and buy property, you might want to open up another one of these. I'm like, okay. I called Meineke right away, and I got a third license. And so I was a very simple guy. The first bucket was the first store. The money was for living. The second one was for the car and some good travel that we were doing. And the third one was only for investing into real estate. So in the early 90s, I went to buy property and build buy the property and build my own building, and I learned how to do that. But getting back to your question, Meineke did not know what I was doing as far as services. They just saw the sales coming in because everything was based on the numbers, not on any reporting. But in the early 90s, we went to another convention. I think it was 1991. We went to a convention in Puerto Rico, and Meineke came out on the dais with like 600 franchisees, and they said, we got this Radio Shack computer with a dot matrix printer because we have a lot of customers that are calling the customer service line and saying they can't read the invoices because the handwriting is sloppy. So we figured we get this. At the time, the Atari was a ping pong thing. So we got this computer to be able to type the names in, and you could print it neatly on the dot matrix printer. And does anybody in the franchise world out here, for a franchisee of Meineke, they want to be a chairman of our computer committee? We need to learn what we could do more with this computer for the business. So everybody in the audience was a lot older than me, and they're like, no, we don't want no stinking computers. I don't want that. And I picked my arm. I says, I'll do it. They said, Bonfiglio, come on up here. And I was so excited. I go up to the dais. And they go, we're going to give you a computer for each one of your locations, and we're going to basically, schedule on Tuesdays and Thursdays to meet with the outside IT company that's building it. And whatever ideas you have, they can, build this system for us so we can learn how we can optimize our business. And I'll skip through it. But the first thing I created was a time clock report, because I didn't like the ugly time cards in the wall with the time clock. I felt that was ugly and antiquated. So I said to them, can we make a time clock where they put the initials in and it prints out the report? So that was my first invention. Second one was we took 20 minutes to make an estimate with a customer, to look up all these different catalogs. But once I started getting into that and I started building the catalog, I actually flew out to Tennessee to Merrimont, which is the main company that sells exhaust to Meineke dealers. And I went to them and I said, do you guys have the data, so I can put it into a point of sale? What's a point of sale? I said, well, it's a computer that lets you put the year, make, and model and show all the parts that fit that car. So I got all that data. I gave it to the software company, and next thing you know, I put data in. And I said, so I went, and Meineke would fly me up every quarter to meet with their corporate representatives in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I said to them, listen, guys, we need to have in this point of sale, I had a list of 20 items every time I went. We have to put like categories of the services and the product lines within those categories. What do you mean? I said, well, if you sell exhaust, don't you want to know how many mufflers they sold, how many tailpipes they sold, how many clamps or hanger brackets? If they sell brakes, don't you want the calipers, the rotors? So I said, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. So I came up with a full category of tune-ups, air conditioning, brakes, shocks. And like, well, we don't want that. That's not allowed by our franchisees to do that stuff. I'm like, no. I'm like, uh-oh. So after that, I said, but I do some of that. Everybody does. So next thing you know, I got a visit from an operation manager from Meineke, and they came down and they saw in my store, oh, you have a tune-up sign on the wall. That's a violation. You have batteries in there. That's a violation. Air conditioning, you can't advertise that. So then all of a sudden, I was real, and again, I was a young guy. I was really concerned. Oh no, what are they going to do to me? And this guy was mean that came down. So he went back up, and I got a legal letter from them. You're going to be terminated if you don't stop doing this. So now the good news is that because I was so involved with the Franchise Advisory Council and the software, the point of sale, I got friendly with a lot of the C-level execs, the CIO, the CFO. So, so there was a split up there. Some of them wanted to let me. I said, listen, if you stop me from doing this in all my stores, I says 70% of the business I'm doing is going to be gone. You get paid on all of that. You get paid all franchise fees and advertising. you shouldn't stop me from doing that. And after about, they told me, give us some time. After a couple of weeks, they gave me what's called a test addendum. So this is like 1993 or 94. They gave me an addendum that allowed me to do these services in my stores, provided that I put a sign on the wall saying these services are only warrantyable at this location, and put on the invoice whenever I sold that service, this is only warranted at this location, and this is, as long as you don't get any complaints, will allow you to keep doing it, because they wanted the royalties and I wanted to grow my business. So that's how it happened. But that, from that point, is how they found out about it. I was scared. I didn't even know what to do. I thought they were going to crush me and take my business away. But I was lucky enough that I gave so much value to them in other things that I was doing that they gave me that concession. And that will go into another segment that I'll continue with when you're ready, but I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah. No, it's just crazy to think that you operated for basically a decade without them even realizing that you were doing things like kind of outside the lines. And I mean, today it's just that would never happen. Like, the visibility a franchisor has into the franchisee's business is way higher. So yeah, it's kind of crazy that was even a possibility back then.
I agree. I didn't, again, for me and myself, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I didn't know. I was just, hey, if Midas was doing it, why shouldn't I? I didn't think that I was doing anything wrong. My customers were happy. Instead of me saying going down to the tune-up place and get a tune-up, I would say, I can take care of it for you. If they wanted a new tire, I'd put it in, whatever it was. They need air conditioning service. And really, what I also learned is that a lot of these services in the aftermarket maintenance and repair business, there's three categories: maintenance, repair, and tires. And so in those categories, they're all more, may say more hot or desirable at certain times of the year. But by offering air conditioning service from May, June, all the way to August, people would come in and spend anything they had to get their car cooled down. From, then there was like a air time, like from January to May, usually people wanted to come out and get their cars tuned up before the summer. So there was different types of seasons that I focused on, different types of services. And I learned that the one repetitive thing that was keeping people coming back again was oil changes. I made relationships because every 3 months they'd come back for an oil change. And I would treat it like when you go to the dentist and you get your teeth cleaned. What do they do before you leave? They make your appointment for your next visit. So I'm at the counter. I'm like, when you're supposed to get your oil change every 3 months. Could I make the appointment for you? And 3 months from now, so I had my customers coming back. And when they come in for their oil change, I'll be able to inspect their cars. And I tell them, listen, while you're in, I'm going to check the car, make sure everything's okay. And if there was something wrong, I give them an estimate in three categories: repairs, maintenance, and tires, which these are the things you may need. So I got really good at doing that, and I started training other Meineke dealers. I became the first Meineke to ever do $1 million in the first year of opening up a business. And I was the only Meineke for many, many years that ever did over $2 million in one of my stores that I was, the biggest store that I built. So I grew.
And this is, sorry, Charles, this is back in the 90s though. So, I mean, $1 million or 2 million sales, you're making a lot of money off a single store, right?
Well, the 2 million store, to be honest, my last Meineke store I opened was in 2001. That was the last one that I opened. And about 2 years in is when I hit the $2 million mark. So it wasn't quite the $1 million store. The one that I did $1 million. I mean, I did $1 million in my stores, but to open up a store in the first year and do it was unheard of. And I opened that store, I believe, in 1994 or 5. I opened that store, and that first year I did $1 million, and that was one of the first stores I built the building. So people saw it being built, and when I opened up, they all came in and they loved it. I built, that was the biggest Meineke ever. It was 10 bays. My last Meineke I built was 18 bays and 10,000 square feet. Like, that was unheard of as well. But the fact is, I always built one bigger after another. And after 2001 was the last one I built. And in 2003, I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to build it. I build new stores every couple of years. And I said, I'm not going to build any more stores for a while. We started having children. Let's keep the ones we got. I sold all the ones that I had leases on. I kept the ones that I owned the buildings on. I want to pay them down so I can collect rent forever and sell them. And that's what I did. But one note I want to tell you is that in 1997, the EPA laws came out where they They basically said that they were going to expand catalytic converters, which is the part of the exhaust, from a 30,000 mile warranty to a 100,000 mile warranty. And to keep up with that make them last, they made the exhaust piping, which was made out of galvanized metal, which rust a lot quicker. They changed it to aluminized to aluminized tubing, and so that was going to last a lot longer. They were trying to get the exhaust to last 100,000 miles from 30,000. So that was going to hurt Meineke's business. And Meineke was getting worried about where's our business going to go. The majority of all our stores are only doing exhaust, and this is going to go away. So in 1997, I got a call from the assistant to the CEO of Meineke, and she said, "Hi, Mr. Bonfiglio. Ken Walker, who was the CEO at the time, wants to bring the C-level team as well as some VPs down to meet you. They want to have me." I said, "Oh, what did I do wrong now?" I'm like, "What's the?" So she goes, "No, it's nothing bad. This is a good thing. You just opened that new store. They want to come and see it, and they want to, talk to you." I said, "Okay." I didn't know what was happening, but they all came down. They came to my store, my new one I just built, and they started taking pictures of all my equipment, all my inventory, started talking to my technicians, see all the signage of all the packages that I was offering, and then they took me out about 1 o'clock from that store. We went to a hotel where they had a big dais, a big table, and again, I'm still young, and I wasn't public speaking at the time. Now I got no problem, but at that time I was like, to get in front of people, especially high level like that, I was a little timid. So they said, "Okay, Charles, now we go into this big room that they rent out. There's about 20 plus C-level execs, CEO, CIO, CMO, CFO, VPs of operations, and they're all at the table, and they're going, "Okay, Charles, go up to the podium." I'm like, "Me?" I'm like, "You want me to go up there?" She goes, "Yeah, well, we told you that we wanted you to write the anatomy of all these services so you can explain it to us." I said, "Okay." So I went up front, got at the podium. I started reading and stuttering, and I put the papers down. I said, "Listen, I'm just going to talk from the heart." I says, and I just kind of told them, "Here's why, here's how, here's what I built, and the anatomy of a tune-up. Here's the equipment you need. Here's the cost. Here's where you buy. Here's where you put it up." I just read the whole thing, and I got questions and answers for like 3-4 hours from everybody, and they would and they learned a lot, and I was wondering why they wanted that, because I didn't know about the changes of the laws that they already knew about. And then they told me at the end, I went, "Oh, so you really want to start off?" She says, "Well, we have a lot of franchisees that have 3 bay stores that can't expand in Brooklyn and New York, and then we have some that have like areas they can expand. So based on the amount of bay space they have, we want to be able to supplement what services we can offer to them to add on addendums. You can now offer tune-ups. You can now offer air conditioning. You can now offer, suspension or tires or oil changes. We don't want to block up their bays for the stuff that they're doing as it fades out." So that was something that I helped Meineke. And then even when they got to these addendums, they didn't know all the details because they were using my anatomy, structure, and pricing. So I worked directly with the legal team to help them write the addendums of what equipment you needed, what ASCs, what you needed for each service, and then they rolled that out to different stores. By 2001, Meineke changed their name to Meineke Car Care Centers from Meineke Discount Mufflers, and then they rolled that new going forward. The franchise agreements were all inclusive of that, and the smaller store was a 5-bay store typically, or bigger.
So the services that almost got you terminated, they end up coming back to you and building basically a new franchise model around that.
Yes. I learned a lot from helping them, and I was just happy. I'm just really happy to help other franchisees that were in my system. Anybody who wanted to learn, I would tell them, come to Florida, come with your family, spend a couple of days in my office. I'll help you get over $1 million. I would tell them, listen, you got to spend a little money. What do you do for marketing? When you pull up to your store, what does it look like? Is it the nicest place in town? When you go inside, do you have, package signs that show, all the services you're doing? People, you don't have to talk to everybody if they know what you offer. So I started really helping them, and a lot of franchisees were like, "Well, I ain't going to pay any more money for Meineke for advertising. I pay the franchisor enough." I'm like, it doesn't matter what you pay them. It's a matter of what you get. They're giving you a brand and a system. You take that and use everything that you love about it, and you add to that what's needed. I said, and I tried to train that and coach that. Of course, the 80-20 rule, 20% of people listened, 80% not so much. And I learned a lot about that, but I really enjoyed helping other franchisees. Sometimes I get up with my wife and I say, I got a new store that opened up in Virginia. Let's take a flight up there, and I want to spend the day with them. You can go shopping, and I just want to spend the day with them and learn everything. And it doesn't matter whether they knew more than me or less than me. I can learn from anybody. It doesn't matter, even if they weren't a good operator. If I go and I learn one thing I learn, I take it back and I put it to play. I learned something about financing from someone. I learned something about how to do the bookkeeping in a better way. Just because they weren't a good operator in some areas doesn't mean you can't learn something from everybody. But when you help other people, you yourself get better, because everything you do for yourself, you test and tune with other people, and you see, so what I'm doing is validated that I am doing well. And I just really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Well, along this journey, when you're going from one store to two to three, and I think you got up to at least 7-ish Meinekes. What is your role? Like, are you able to get your hands dirty and fix the air conditioning on these cars, or are you just a manager and you're hiring mechanics? And even again, like scaling from 1 to 3 units, it's very difficult for a lot of people to figure out, like because you have to figure out and make sure store number 1 is set and rolling so that you can actually focus on getting number 2, and then so on, right? It's a rinse and repeat process. But was that a smooth process? Because the way I'm hearing it, it sounds like number 1 did good, number 2 did well too, number 3 you were doing that so you could start buying real estate. But are you having labor turnover and any difficulties there? And how much are you working on a weekly basis? Like, I'd love to hear what your life was like, and again, what your role was within the stores.
Well, in the first 1 to 2 stores, I actually was getting my hands dirty. I was always good with my hands, so I didn't learn. The 2 services that I did pretty well was I did custom exhaust. So with Meineke, you have straight tubing. A stick of tubing 10 feet long, costs about $10, and you cut it in half, and you can go on the pipe bending machine, and they have these calculators that let you bend an exhaust pipe or a tailpipe. And so for a $10 stick of tubing, you're selling an exhaust pipe for $57 and a tailpipe for $87. That you spent $10 for those 2 pieces together. So the profitability was really good with exhaust. And I got really good at working with my hands, of bending the pipe, putting them on. And it was a little bit of an art form to make the pipes look, you do dual exhaust, they got to look coming out the back perfectly. I was doing Flowmaster mufflers, which is performance exhaust. I like doing that. I probably wasn't the best at it, but I was pretty good. And then I started as we started growing and adding brakes, I started doing brake jobs. And I would only fill in for for some of the guys. So I was very quick at it. And so I focused my energy on working with customers. I want you to know, all my life, even from a very young kid, I never thought I was a salesman. I thought I sucked at sales. Like, I just was always like, I don't want to ever sell. I never want to sell. But I found that with Meineke, it really wasn't sales. It was show and tell. I would take the customer out to the bay, put the car in the lift, and say, see that exhaust pipe? It has all the holes rotten in it. See that muffler? It's got a hole. And, see this pipe? They need to be changed, and you need a couple of clamps to hold it together. And they go, how much? I'm like, let me go look it up. And I go to the office and I'd look it up in the computer. I'm like, here's what it costs. I know, $350, it's expensive, but I don't, if you want, I can do it for you. And they, okay, yeah, do it. So I really wasn't selling. I was show and telling, and people took to me because of that, because I was very transparent. I didn't have to sell them something that they couldn't see or feel. And if it was brakes, I'd say, look, see the rotors, the pads are grinding in it. You got to change this. This could be a safety issue. You need an oil change. Look how dirty the oil is. If you don't get this done, you could hurt the engine. So I recommend we do that in the transmission flush. So I will be able to talk. I really enjoyed speaking. I would never sell. I would always tell. And if they said no, okay, well, let me know when you're ready. As they got a little older, I got a little bit more where, you know what, well, I got to check with my wife. I'm like, who wears the pants in the family, you or her? I got a little bit more. And then I would say, why don't we give her a call, and I can explain it to her if you want me to. And so, and vice versa too. If the woman came in, I got to ask my husband, well, if you want, I can speak to him. If you're always at work, we'll give him a call. I'll talk to him. And I would say, hey, Joe, how you doing? By the way, I'm checking your car for your wife. If you want to have it done while she's here, here's what it needs. Here's why it needs it. And so I really was good with helping people. I was never selling. And so once you think about selling, I felt like I'm not good at that. If you're thinking about telling and asking, do you want me to do it? It just felt better for me. Especially I had like that Brooklyn dialect, so I had to really be softer than most other people. If I was from the Midwest or something, maybe that would have been more appealing but I just knew what my limitations, what I was good at. And so I grew from, working in the Bay, in the first, second Bay, to really training managers of how to sell and as far as I kept employee with me like no other. Meineke, one of the things they asked me when they took me out to that meeting is they said, how do you keep your employees for so long? I said, well, number one, I treat them really well. Number two, I give them spiffs or commission. A spiff is where if you add this item on, I give you $3, $5. Commissions are, you guys do 10,000 in work, I'm giving you 20% of it. You make 2,000. I don't care how much you make. If you're winning, I'm winning. I never looked at it, if I win, then I'll give you. I think if you win, then I'll make. And if somebody wasn't doing a good job and they weren't breaking their commission, I would never say, listen, you're not making any money for me, leave. I'd say, no. I'm like, what's going on in your life? You got a wife, you got a kid. How come you're not, is there something wrong? Can I help you with something? Because if it ain't working for you, it's not working for me. I never said it's about me. It's always about you. You should be walking home with $2,000 a week. Why are you not? I know you can do better than that. What can I do to help you? If it's not going to work for you, and I'm going to see you not have enough money, I don't want that to be where you work for me. I want to be proud that I have somebody to be able to make good living. So I always flipped it around to how much they can make, because if they won, I won. Not if I win, then I'll pay you. And when I did that method, it let me grow. And whenever we broke a store record, I would take everybody out to dinner. Not just the one store. I would take all the stores out to dinner, whether it be Outback Steakhouse, and I would, guys, these are the winners this week. You got to give them kudos. I want you guys and you guys to do next week. You guys got to come on, let's get this going. And we'd go, and anywhere from 5 to 10 times a year, we'd break records, and they'd all go out to dinner, and we would take pictures, and we'd celebrate. Sometimes we'd have, little barbecues at the shop, or something like where we'd invite the family a little bit, not often, but once or twice a year. Always have a Christmas party or holiday party. So by doing that, it just kept them more engaged. They weren't going to get that at a car dealership. They weren't going to get that some of the other competitors. And it wasn't that I was doing it because of that. I told you, my father told me two things. He taught me how to work with my hands and how to work with people. And treating people right really sets a high level for how much they're getting paid and how much they can want to work for a company and be part of something. And I'd say, listen, this is not Meineke Charles. You have a position in this world. You have a position. It's Meineke Joe. It's Meineke Alex. It's Meineke, Cynthia. It's your domain, and you're getting paid a commission the same way I am, and the same way Meineke is. So let's understand each other. We have to grow together. It's not a one size fits all, but we have to learn to grow together. And as I open up new stores, if you want to move to assistant manager or manager, or if you like what you're doing, maybe you go into the new store. I always have to keep some in the old and some in the new, but I can put you there if you want to grow with me. So I kept people for like years and years and years, had a really good tenure of all my employees because I treated them well. And sometimes you get a guy, the dealership's going to pay me more. That's a better job. All right, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but if it doesn't work out, I'm always here for you. You're always a good employee. I'd always welcome you back if I have an opening at that time. And more times than not, if someone left, they would want to come back. Didn't take them all back because you have to have, they have to really be special and you have to have the opening. But that's the way I ran my business, and that was how I kept people. Another thing Meineke said to me is, we speak to other Meineke dealers and like, they hear Pep Boys has opened up across the street from us. And they're like, oh no, what's going to happen? I'm going to lose my business. And they'd say, but Charles, how come when we tell you a Pep Boys is opening up, you're like, screw them, I'll crush them? Like, what gives you that mentality to do that? I said, because I know my competitors. They're going to hire, 18-year-old kids. They don't know what they're doing. They're going to screw up the cars. They're going to come to me, and I'm going to fix the cars, and they're going to love me for it. So it's just going to give me more business. I just had a mentality that was different than most, and I don't know why and how I got that, but I really worked hard, and I knew I was going to work harder than the next person, and it gave me that comfort level to grow. But in 2001, after I opened up my largest store, I decided I don't want to open them anymore for a while at least, and I just want to focus on my wife and I have a couple of kids. I want to get them through preschool and school, because I lost my best friend and my partner when we started having kids. I realized, oh my God, she's coming to work every day, and all of a sudden now she's taking the kids. So it wasn't as fun, and my wife is my best partner, my best friend, as well as my lover. So I really loved spending time with her, and I lost that to some degree So I didn't have the same zest of opening up businesses for a while. And that's how I opened up my
Okay.
last one, and it didn't go.
Well, so your wife was really side by side with you throughout the business. I mean, I know you said earlier that she did the books, but she was in the office with you every day for the most part before you guys had kids.
Until we had our first kid in 1999, from the beginning, we rode into work one car every day and home every day. We come in every day, we go to lunch every day, we go to visit the next store, we go to the next store, we come back, and we go to dinner every night, and we go home. We were like one. It was like, and she didn't ever want to get behind the counter and deal with a customer, and I didn't want to get in the back room and deal with the bookwork. It was like such a great partnership. And to this day, she is in my franchise corporate headquarters almost every day, working with me.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I do want, before we get to, because I know around this 2001 mark when you pump the brakes on Meineke, no pun intended, but when you do that, I know Tint World is going to come into the picture shortly thereafter. But I do want to ask you, when you're working with your employees and you know the ones who maybe aren't performing well, and you're building this team and this culture, did you ever feel just the financial pressure or the stress that comes with being the owner of the business? And, you know, meaning I don't think any, or, you know, maybe most at least, I like to be optimistic about humanity, but like, I don't think most owners want to be like mean to their employees or mean to people in general. But when you own a business and you have maybe personal guarantees and, you know, you got payroll coming up and it's your bank account, your money, I think that stress and that pressure gets to people. So if an employee isn't performing well, it's just like, hey, like, you're not working out, like, get out of here. I got to fix this as fast as possible. Is that just not in your nature to maybe react that way if someone is costing you money? Or was it that your business is maybe, I don't know, maybe they just got off to such a good start that you always had a bit of a cushion where you could almost afford the time to work with an employee and help them get better?
I never thought about money. I still don't. I literally, money to me is a scorecard, you know, and so it's how well I'm doing. If I'm doing well and my team is doing well, the money is there. If I'm always looking about the money, then like I'm not doing what I love, and I love business and I love development. Now, after I would say starting in around the mid '90s, because prior to then, I didn't even look at a P&L. I didn't even know what a P&L was. I was like, P&L, what's that for? I just know I make, I grow, I get money. But when I started to look at P&Ls and I started to organize my profit and loss statements in certain factors, in certain ways, I needed to know what are the few numbers that I got to adjust based on raise or lower that category. So I noticed if my advertising spend was lower than 10%, it usually brought down my gross sales. So I always wanted, so if I said, oh man, I only spent 9% last month, I should bring it up to 10, 11% to make up for it next month. And then I'd measure what is working and what's not working. I get the data out of the point of sale. They're coming in for this, that, they're coming in for newspaper, they're coming in for direct mail, they're coming in for the website. So by measuring it, I could manage it, but I looked at how much I spent. A lot of franchisees misconceive marketing as an expense, not an investment for ROI. And that is a really big problem. And it's that way in my franchise right now. And it was way even worse than when I was at Meineke or other companies, because they're not transparent as much as I am on our marketing fund. So that one number I looked at, if I'm not spending enough, that's probably why my sales are down. And if I'm spending on something that's not giving me an ROI, I should really put that money somewhere else, not cut it out. So that was one. The other thing was percentage of labor to sales. I wanted my percentage of labor to sales to be under 25%. Because if it went over 25%, that only meant one thing. That meant that I have an employee on my staff that's not doing a lot of money. He's like, their base pay is more than their commission. The commission should always be 1.5 times their base pay. Why? Because it gives a cushion in case the business is a little slow that week, they're still above their base pay. So I managed to put a commission in place. So the commission was usually anywhere between 15 to 20% on a technician that's a top tier technician, Master Tech. I had one of those in all my stores. That's the lead guy or girl. And then underneath that, there was the B techs that usually got 17%. And then I had my oil change guys that basically got a base salary and a spiff for everything they added on. So by doing that, they were able, Listen, people don't know they need wiper blades. They don't know they need transmission fluid. They don't know they need, and these are the services that lead techs don't want to do. So I trained my oil change techs to be able, instead of making $10 or $12 an hour at the time, to basically be able to make $30 an hour. How do you do that? Here's an inspection sheet. Go look at the oil, the fluid, the belts, the hoses, and just come up to the counter and say, by the way, I was looking at your car. Here's a couple of things that you need. And just as a tech, just go tell the customer that. How much is that? I'll let the manager know and he can get your prices on that. By just training them how to do this, the customer was trusting of the, and they would take them out and show them. I show them show and tell. So by doing that, now this person that would be working on an oil change for $12 an hour would now do an alignment. They would get $5 extra. They would do a fuel injection service. They would get $5 extra. You know, and now these services are all between $100 and $200. So the company's making money, but now they're doing something that the lead techs don't want to do, but they can do. So I found a way to make everybody make money. And when somebody wasn't making, I didn't look at like what I was making. When I looked at their salaries, and their salaries were less, like on an oil change guy, if it was less than 700, I'm like, I wouldn't say nothing on a weekly basis, but every 4 or 5 weeks, if I saw that was coming down, I said, guy, what's the matter, man? You're better than this. The other guys are all doing it, and why are you not making the money you should be making? You got a family. Let's help you get to there. What do you need from me? Can I help you? Do you need more training? What? So, and I would have a couple of coaching sessions with that, but if it didn't get better, I'm saying, listen, obviously it's not working for you, and I don't want to see you not doing this. So maybe it's not working for us, and maybe you should find another job somewhere else that maybe you're more excited about. And, you know, they could talk me back into staying and give them another shot, but it wasn't about how much money I was making. If they were making money, I was making money. And I used to find out sometimes, Meineke, a lot of franchisees didn't want to go onto the point of sale system. So Meineke had me come to the annual conventions, and I would go there and I'd say, guys, I know you guys are really big and you're smart. I said, but how much money do you pay each of your guys? Well, I pay them $1,200, $1,500. I was like, who does the most work out of all your store? I don't know. They all work together. No, they don't. Who does the most and who does the least? I don't know. I said, well, I was the same way. Let me show you a report on the screen here that when I started logging all the stuff in the computer, I found out that my lead technician was doing the least amount of work. My B tech and my C and my oil change tech were doing $8,000 to $12,000 a week. The lead tech was doing $3,000 a week. $3,000 a week at 20% is giving them $600. I'm paying them $1,200, $1,500. I'm losing almost $1,000 a week, which is $4,000 a month. $4,000 a month. Can you imagine? I said, and you guys are probably doing the same thing and you don't know. And after that conversation with them, I said, that's just one report. I can go a bunch of others. They all started signing up for the point of sale because they realized the numbers matter and they didn't know what they didn't know. And again, exhaust was a very profitable business. So as it started migrating to other services that weren't as profitable, they didn't know why they're doing the same $1 million or $800,000 in sales, but not making as much money, because you have to run it differently. You have to be accountable. They have to be accountable. You have to be accountable. You have to be accountable for your cost of goods, your gross profit margins. I only want to know, I tell my manager, I only want to know 3 or 4 numbers every day. I want to know, did everybody break commission? What was my gross profit margin? And what was the gross sales? And then I want to know what good things happened today and what things happened that I should be concerned about. I don't want to know anything. Everything else is bubblegum. It's all drama. Just give me those 5 items. I'm happy, and I know if there's a problem, I got to deal with it. If things happen good, I'm proud of you. If everybody broke commission, it's great. If my cost of goods was under 25%, I'm good. If everything is just that, and the numbers will grow. And then I, on the monthly basis, would look at my P&L and verify all those numbers are in line and my marketing structure is working properly.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me. I interviewed Jersey Mike's franchise owner, and their franchisor or longtime franchisor CEO Peter Cancro had a big focus on like the fundamentals, which for Jersey Mike's was just like, having a smile on your face, keeping your shirt tucked in, making the sandwiches the right way, right? Like keeping it real simple, but those like fundamentals are really what, and just keeping it simple really built the business. And the things you're saying, just like the show and tell, and just telling the customer, hey, here's what needs fixing. If you want it, we can do it. Like nothing fancy. And it feels like that's what has really worked for you. But I want to hear, when did you? Because I know you didn't found Tint World. You you met with the original owner and eventually buy it off him and begin franchising it later on. But yeah, how does that meeting come about, and where are you at with the Meineke business at that point that allows you to even focus on a new venture?
So, as I got to 2001, I only had about 3 Meinekes left of the real estate that I owned. Late 90s, and again, my wife and I started having children, and I lost my best friend every day to drive to work with, so it wasn't as much fun, quite frankly. And I said, you know what, I'm still going to run the businesses, but I'm going to hold off for a while. Let's let the kids go to preschool and enter regular school, and by that time you'll be able to spend some of the days with me, and I'll have fun again, because I was more fun with my wife. She's awesome. So I took a couple of years. I told everybody. I told my wife, I said, listen, I'm not going to open up any business for a while. And I went into buying real estate. I started buying pre-construction townhomes, started building them, renting them out. I started doing other things like that didn't take a lot of my time. Use my money to work for me rather than me work for the money to grow it. And then as far as how did I know about Tint World? So Tint World, the guy that started Tint World started with one store in 1982, about a year before I moved to Florida. And he had started with one store. About a year later, he opened the second one. A couple of years later, he opened the third one. By the time it got to the late 90s, he had about 6 locations. And they weren't anything spectacular. But in a tint shop, there was really no multi-unit tint shop. There was no brand, but I really liked the name Tint World. I had to have it. I loved it. And but I brought my car there every couple of years. I'd get a new car and I'd bring it there to tint it, because they were built on a shoestring budget, but they were actually brick and mortar stores where most people that did window tinting was out of a car or out of a warehouse. It wasn't really a business, but he had somewhat of a business. And he also ran these little bathing beauty contests in Fort Lauderdale. They were fun. He also ran the small planes that would go over the intercoastal, over the waterways on the beach. He had a big string on the back.
Yeah.
And I used to see that, and like, that's really cool. So I always had a fond thought from them. But in 2005, I was at my parents' house for Christmas. We're all sitting around the table. My sister was there with her new boyfriend that they were engaged. My wife was there, my parents, some others. And I leaned over to my dad and I said, Dad, I haven't been opening up more business for a while. He goes, yeah, I know. I go, but I think I'm going to start opening businesses. He goes, really? What do you want to do? I said, well, I don't want to open up any more Meineke. So what do you want to do? I said, I want to open up the business I always dreamed of. I said, I came down here. I came down to Florida to open up this, and I can't go on without ever living my dream. I did really well with the Meinekes, and I'm still doing well with them in the real estate and all that other stuff, but I really want to build this. And I says, and I don't just want to build one store, because that ain't going to do anything for me. I said, all I'm telling you is that there's no other franchise like it. And if I want this business, there's got to be others that want it too. So I'm going to build an aftermarket accessory business. But rather than start from scratch, I got this cool little business called Tint World that I've been watching, and I think I'm going to offer the guy to buy the company and convert it to a franchise. I says, and I think I could do it better. I know what Meineke did. I was in with all of their stuff. I said, I think I can do it even better. I says, I know I can help franchisees grow. So he said, Charles, that's a great idea. You could do anything in life that you put your mind to and you work at. I said, I know that. You always told me that. You're awesome. So from that point there, meanwhile, my sister's fiance at the table said, I'm going to be your first franchisee if you do this. I'm like, really? His name is Patrick. I said, really? Okay, Patrick. I said, I'll let you know as soon as I'm ready. It's going to take me a little time. He goes, okay. I didn't tell anybody my secrets. It was just family. So from that point, I went after Christmas and I gave a call to the owner of Tint World, Bobby. I called him up. I said, hey, Bobby, my name is Charles. I brought my car there a bunch of times. I want to know if you want to go out to lunch. He goes, well, who are you? I said, my name is Charles Bonfiglio. I own a lot of the Meinekes here in South Florida. Oh, I know you. Because I was all over the news. When I was building new stores, I got in the... So he goes, oh, I know you, man. You run really good stores. I said, well, I want to open up a business similar to yours, but rather than start from scratch, let's have a meeting. So I took him out to lunch, and before we were done, I gave him a memorandum of understanding that was an opportunity for him to sell to me. It took me about 2 or 3 months to final out the deal, and I bought the rights and the business rights to the name and all the assets of Tint World. We closed on the deal on August of 2026, where Tint World LLC franchise was born. And then from that point, I started writing the FDD and the franchise agreement. I had a lot of knowledge of franchising from Meineke. I read about 30 different FDDs and franchise agreements. During the 90s, Meineke had a little bit of a legal issue at Kenstar, and because I was on the committees, I was in every one of those quarterly meetings. So, and they would always go back and forth with the best franchise agreement that Meineke dealers wanted, and the one that Meineke wanted, and it was a negotiation for 10 years. So I learned so much, not really knowing I was, but it just came to me. So when I went to write the franchise agreement and the FDD and the operations manual, that was my key. And I felt that Tint World, if it just does tint, it's going to be like exhaust. I got to expand the services. So I wrote the business model, and I filed franchising in 2007, and we got approved. And when I got approved, I called my brother-in-law up, and I called when I signed the deal with the guy who I bought the company from, he kept all of his stores. He said, I want to keep the stores because I know if you make it a franchise, you're going to make it better. I said, well, and the agreement was, when I get approved for the franchise, you would sit and sign a franchise agreement with all your stores. With that, I sold 3 licenses. One was my brother-in-law, and the 6 existing stores came in, and we had a big moratorium. I got pictures of all this. Sat around the table. We all signed the franchise agreement in like June of 2007, and we became a national franchise just by doing that. Well, not national. I filed nationally, but all the ones in Florida, we had 9 franchise locations. And then we just started growing a little bit from there. And I focused for the first years on business operations. I had to get a point of sale into the system. They were doing everything by hand. I had to get a website updated, a franchise opportunity website, brochures, cataloging. I worked my butt off. And little by little, we sold a few stores a year just because it was an exciting business. Very little money in marketing. And by the time we got to 2019, we had about 70 stores with about maybe 20 in the pipeline under development. And I felt like the business the brand is right, the model is predictable, successful, things are good. I think I'm ready to scale. And so I put a lot of time into talking to high level franchise, anybody would talk to me that was in a top tier franchise, to learn from them. And then I got really good at selling franchises. And in 2020, I should say, I was ready to scale. In February, I went to the International Franchise Convention in Orlando, met a bunch of people, even Meineke people were there. How you doing it? I'm doing good. And I got some feedback from them. And then I came out of there planning to up my spend from $100,000 a year in marketing to $500,000 a year in marketing, and joining a bunch of the broker network. But when I did that, we got hit with the pandemic. And I got to tell you, I have a very strong mind. I'm like, I'm gonna take advantage of this. I'm gonna come out swinging. And I had to get my team in place. So I had to get my head of my team in place first. I came back to the corporate office. We had a meeting. I said, guys, if anybody is concerned about this to the point where you don't want to come to work, let me know. I'll lay you off now if you want to. You can come back when you feel better. If you're all in, we got to get tight. We only got to go to work and home like family. And then once I get that done, we have to work with franchisees to have that same mindset. We were lucky because we became an essential business, being the automotive field, where a lot of other franchises weren't so lucky. And that also propelled us by having a lot of the broker networks needed to, where am I going to send my clients? An essential business. And so we sold the most franchises in 2020 we ever sold. I think it was 21. And then in 2021, we sold 69 licenses. And from there, it just kept growing every year.
Yeah. And can you talk about maybe how the model has changed, if at all, from that original acquisition back in 2006? Was it just doing window tinting, and you've added maybe other aftermarket accessory services? Any evolution of the model, and just even like what the core business looks like today inside the 4 walls.
So he, at the time, he was doing, the Tint World before me was doing, I would say 80% of the business in window tint, and maybe the balance of it in miscellaneous detailing services, a lot of lower end, just cleaning cars and waxing them. They sold some stereo work, but the guy that I bought the company from didn't keep any inventory in. And when somebody comes in, they want to be able to buy and get and do. For the most part, you can't, so there wasn't a lot of other stuff that he was doing. He just kept it on a shoestring budget and running it. Even the place where you walked in, it looked like a 20-year-old business. It wasn't wasn't modified. So in the first thing I did is I wanted to brand it. And I even remember back, even the automotive shops way back when I started with Meineke, you got a sign in the building, and other than that and a little bit of paint, there's nothing branded about it. I used to look at the automotive, I looked at the food restaurants, fast and casual, and they were so perfect. Like every one, they have the cups, the straws, the caps, the menu boards, the interiors look the same, the outside look the same. Everyone, I'm like, why don't they do this with auto aftermarket repair? I mean, even the Goodyears and the Firestones, they were a little bit better, but even them at the time, before 2020, I'd say before the 2000s, they were like, they open up a business, it's got some bays, they put a sign, there's nothing about it. Old furniture, cheap, there was no branded. So I was always appealing towards why the fast and casual. So what I did was I started to read franchise disclosure documents and agreements for fast and casual restaurants while I was building Tint World. If I'm going to build this thing, I want a branded automotive styling center where people can come in, whether it's a 16-year-old girl getting her first car and the parents want to get it tinted or put a GPS tracking device to make her safe, or whether it's a 30-year-old guy that's got his first Camaro or sports car and wants to do some performance stuff to it, or whether it's, a guy closer to my age, that they were an older guy and they got a freaking Ferrari or Lamborghini and they want to protect it with paint protection film and ceramic coating and keep it looking gleamy and brand new and protected. I wanted to build that model, and the only way I was going to do it is by finding these restaurants that were fast and casual had the system. How do I bring that in to my franchise agreement and my systems? So I worked throughout till I got to 2020, to get that model right. And once I got it right, the stores were branded. I have digital displays in the office that have video displays on all the products. They're all interactive where you can test them and tune them, feel the different heat lamps of the different tint that you package that you choose, see the ceramic coating, how it just keeps the hydrophobic paint so shiny. So the business back then, he didn't do any of that. It was just a couple of tint jobs, a couple of detail jobs, mostly very few exhaust, Costerio jobs. And so I wanted to evolve that into a complete styling center where you can go, anybody in your family can go for one thing and get as much or as little as you needed and feel comfortable buying it. Not that I got to be worried about I'm going to send my wife or my daughter to a place that's kind of shady and it's all about these muscle car guys. I want it to be a family business, and that's kind of what I took to create. And I felt by 2019 that model was created and it was ready to scale. The first store wasn't that way. I would say it took me about 30, 40 units before it got to be where it was, done. And I was very fortunate. A lot of franchise companies that start franchising, they might have a couple of businesses and they start, or it's a private equity company, they just want to scale. Me, I didn't need any money. I already made my money. And I even kept two of my Meinekes all the way to 2014 while I was building Tint World. So I had money coming in from my real estate, from my businesses. Tint World was, every dollar I made, I invested back into the branding, the website, the displays, the construction, the signage program. Everything was always about how do I make this thing right. And I felt by 2019 it was as good as it was going to get. It's always going to evolve, but that's when the model was built and all the categories of service were offered. And I also have a standard category that everybody is required to offer. And then I have extended categories that's optional for them because, things that are, snow tires and wheels in the Northeast are not going to be good in Florida, and Jeeps and pickup trucks are bigger in the Midwest than they are in Florida. Florida, it's all about the sports cars. So I understand there's a difference of the eclectic of vehicles and what services are more popular, but the core category people had to count on was for everybody, and then the other ones based on their growth and what that model. And of course with Google, you can go see what's popular in different areas so you can know what you should be selling, what are people looking for, what in your areas, nobody's offering this, you got to do this. So I really was very methodical about how I offered it to franchisees. Again, I'm a franchisee first, so I know what they're thinking when I'm going to tell them, I want you to do this, or you can or should do this. Very difficult to deal with franchisees, especially in the automotive world. People in the fast and casual world, much more amenable to follow a system than in the automotive world.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to ask. I think for one, I think it's great. It sounds like given your success prior to growing Tint World, you were able to be methodical, take your time with it, right? You weren't in a rush to sell 100 franchises in year one. You just took your time, and once it was ready, it sounds like right around 2019, 2020 is when you put your foot on the accelerator. But how did you enjoy, switching the role from franchisee to franchisor? Obviously, as you said, you had a ton of experience just being a part of a franchise from your Meineke days. But was it different than you expected sitting in the franchisor seat and then, working with the first handful of franchisees who, at one point, right, you were in that seat with Meineke starting out in the 80s. What was that transition like for you?
Actually, it was great. It was a great experience, and I think I wasn't just a franchisee. I was a franchisee from late 80s. I joined the Franchise Advisory Council. So every quarter I was flying up to corporate, sitting around tables with all the executives talking about how we can make the business better. Whether it's the marketing, whether it's the technology, whether it's the the vendor relations, whether it's operations in the stores, how do we make it better? So, and then of course by doing that, I was very friendly with other franchisees and I loved coaching them and helping them grow their business. I just really enjoyed that. Come down and visit my store. I'll fly out and visit yours if you want me to. I helped. Some people said, how did you build your own buildings? I'm like, here's my blue plans. Let me show you. I'll help you find the property. I'll find you a contractor. We'll do it. So everything that I learned, I wanted to help everybody do. And I didn't make any money doing that. I just really enjoyed it. So for me, when I became a franchisor, it was a natural. I was doing this already for another franchise company. Meineke would actually get me people I helped them sell stores in China, Mexico, other countries. They'd say, hey, Charles, I got somebody from another country. You're the biggest store. Can you please talk with them? Yeah, have them come visit me. I enjoyed helping them, just grow as a company. Now, when Raw Capital came in and bought Meineke and they started changing things, I kind of took a step back. And that was part of the reason why I didn't want to really develop any more stores with them because, I didn't really love the direction they were going. Not that they're doing a great job now, don't get me wrong. But like there was a barrier of time when there was a lot of tension between the franchisor and the franchisees with that relation. But regardless, I helped franchisees when I was a Meineke dealer, so it was a natural fit for me to help franchisees. And in the beginning, up until the first 30 stores, there was me, a bookkeeper, a guy that I hired to help build out stores, and I would do the training, I would do finding the real estate, I would negotiate the leases, I would help them do the build out. I would help them do the grand opening marketing. I'd go to the grand openings. For the first 30 stores, it was all me and nobody else. I looked at it like they were my partner, even though they weren't. And I had to live with their budget of what their financials were and help them grow and open and get to the first year. That's one by one. That's the way I built it. And then I had to train, by the time I got to about 30 and I had all these in the pipeline, I had to figure out I got to get people to do this with me because I'm spread too thin. And I won't be able to grow and do a good job. So that was a harder find because up until recently, everybody that I hired they were a good person, they had a good skill set, and they fit in my culture. So I trained them to do that job, and that was good for a period. But by the time we got to like 90 or 100, like that wasn't good enough anymore. Having just good people with a skill. They didn't know anything about franchising. So everything they learned is what I was able to train them. And as good as I can be, I'm only one guy. I mean, there's things that I don't even know, and I'm continually learning. So I don't want you to think that I'm a know-it-all. But I know a lot, and I've hired people now that know a lot and have the experience and wherewithal and relationships beyond what I even had when I was building it. So it's really nice to finally get to a level where I can count on my people more so than them having to count on me, so to speak.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, to be the main kind of person, even for up to your first 30 franchisees, that's, I got to imagine you were pretty busy, but obviously now, as you said, you've built kind of the systems and people to take some work off your plate. And I know there's recently been, right, a transaction where I think it was Susquehanna or one of the private equity firms did give you some capital and made an investment. So as someone who, you went your whole career bootstrapping, doing things yourself, what was the decision like? Obviously, maybe, financial motivation maybe came into it, I would imagine, right? But was there anything else in your mind of why now is the right time to take an investment, bring in a partner when you had never done that your entire career?
And you know what? If you would have asked me in the beginning of 2024, up till the first and second quarter of 2024, if you would have asked me, would you ever sell? Are you interested in taking in a partner? My answer would be the same way I probably answered about 100 other PE firms and M&A firms that called me in the last 10 years. They emailed me, called me, want to take me out to dinner, lunch. I love the business model. It's unique, blah, blah, blah. I always had to be careful to be very friendly and respond to everybody. I'm not interested right now. Thank you for your interest. I appreciate it. Because I never really wanted to really turn anybody off. I'm not really a wise guy. I want to just try to be friendly, but they don't stop. But what happened is my son, and there was only, in my mind, there was only three things that were going to maybe deter me from selling in the future. One was, if I saw the market in automotive or what I was doing was going to a direction where I didn't think I could continue to grow. Two, if there was maybe something with a health issue with me or my wife that wouldn't allow us to have the fun growth that we were always having. Or three, if when my son got out of college, he wasn't willing to take on the family business. Because who's going to take it if I can't? Three things that would have made me consider, taking on a partner or selling. And so what happened was my son was in Emory University in Georgia, and he went to business school, really smart kid. And he was in the third year of college, and he called me up. He said, Dad, I'm coming home this summer, and I want to see if I can get an internship with a PE firm. He goes, do you know anybody? And I knew these guys over at Boxwood Partners, which is an M&A firm specifically for founder-led franchises. And if there's anybody of all the people that came in M&A firms that talked to me, Patrick was the nicest, non-offensive, easy guy for me to work with. I really thought he invited me to some of his parties up in Jupiter once or twice a year, and I would meet his founders. They all had great things to say, but I wasn't interested. But when my son asked me, can I get an internship, I called up Patrick. I said, Patrick, my son's coming back for the summer from college. He's got 1 year left after this. He wants an internship. Would you do it? He goes, I really don't usually do that, but I'll do it for you. I said, fine. So I got my son an apartment in end of May, early June of 2024 up in Stewart. He'd work there all week like a dog. I mean, these guys work from 7 in the morning to 11 at night doing all these private equity deals. And then on the weekends, he would come home and stay with me and my wife in Boca Raton. He'd drive down, and it's like an hour and a half drive. He'd drive down, stay with us, and back and forth. And as he was coming back, over the course of 2.5 months, my son, every weekend I'd speak to him, was getting smarter and smarter. Like book smart is one thing, but he was getting like PE firm smart. Wow. I'm really enjoying speaking to him more than I ever did. Tell me what else, son. He was really good. But he finished his last week, I think the first week in August of 2024, and he had 2 weeks to come back and spend with us. Got rid of the apartment, came back with us before he went back to college. During those 2 weeks, he said, Mom and Dad, I want to have a conversation. I go, so we came to us, we sat in the living room, and he stood up and we both sat on the couch. And he kind of sort of lectured us in a positive way. He said, Mom and Dad, you two worked your whole life harder than anybody that I know. Dad, you're so smart and you have so many ideas and you do them all yourself. You're always doing everything yourself. He goes, and Mom, she's working right there with you. I mean, she needs a break too. He goes, I'm telling you, I'm watching what Boxwood doing with these other companies. And they're giving them, $200 million in money they're getting. They're still keeping a piece of the company and getting another crack at the apple in a year or two. In 5 years when they go to the next acquisition. He goes, Dad, it's not only the money. He goes, but the money that you're going to make on the money they give you on top of the next round, they're going to grow you 4 or 5 times faster than you could do it yourself, as good as you are. They're going to put the resources in once you get a partner that's the right partner. He goes, I've seen what they're doing. I'm only there like less than 3 months, and I can see what they've done in the past and what they're doing. He goes, so I really think you should consider this. And I said, son, I really appreciate this. It's really good insight. I had a lot of questions. I went back and forth. But when he was done, he went back to college. And then I called my wife. I said, I want to have dinner with you. We sat down, we have dinner. I said, Jeanette, I told you only 3 reasons were going to make me sick. Number 1, if the market's changing no good. Number 2, if one of us have a health issue. Or number 3, if Anthony's not going to come run the company. It's very clear to me that he's not coming to run the company. He's going back for his last year of college. And he's moving to New York. He wants to work with a private equity firm, banker. He wants to do something like that, banking. He's smart. I wish he would, but he's not. And we can't do this forever. And he makes a good point. If we can grow 4 times faster and we could take chips off the table and just roll with that and improve our quality of life with higher level people running the company. Let's talk about that. She was happier than I've seen her in a long time, because she's quietly, she'll support anything I say, but I think she felt the same way. And then we called up Boxwood. They came down here. We sat at my kitchen table in my house. Not my kitchen, my living room, dining room table. It was like they brought 3 guys. I had myself, my wife, and my president, John Norman, all sit at the table. They went through what the process looks like, how long it would take, what the steps are. And before long, we started that process. So from September of 2024 till April of 2025, we did all our financial arrangements and loaded it all to them, so it was just an order. In April, they went to market. We got like 142 PE firms that were interested in our company. We got about 20 offers. 10 of them were the top people that we liked that felt would fit the most with us, and we narrowed it down to 5. And then from that point, it was each one of them was dinner, board meeting for like 2 weeks during May and June. And then the offers started coming in even stronger. And then on 4th of July, I got an offer in from Susquehanna. Susquehanna is a $70 billion company. We're bigger than all of them. And it wasn't because of that. It was because they're just nice people. I love the way they were. I love who they bought. I love what they've done. And they've been calling me and been friends with me for probably 10 years before this. I just was always one of the companies I was like, no, guys, I really appreciate it. I'm not ready now. But when they gave me that offer and I looked at it, my wife and I went back with them 1 or 2 times that day. By 8 o'clock that night on 4th of July, we accepted their offer. It took us till 2.5 months of due diligence. They loved what we had. I'm very organized with all my documents. First time I've ever got to show anybody how well organized my files are, and it was really nice to show off for the first time because I was very concealing on that. But we closed on September 25th of 2025, and I was always wondering what's the best I'm going to get. What's the biggest benefit I'm going to get out of this? I didn't, other than money. Money's, I told you, money's a scorecard. I got 20 times EBITDA. I wanted to get that 20 times. There's companies that may have gotten more, but not many, like maybe Jimmy John's or something. But for what we were and how we were, we got what we wanted, and so that was good. But then it was like, what are they gonna? I went to a CEO event right after we closed in Miami. They had all their brands and CEOs there, and I would go over them privately and say, what's the biggest thing you got out of the benefit of being with them? I just want to know what to expect, because I just closed last month. And they're like, the first thing that you're gonna do is they're gonna help you level up your team, because you're going to have a team that you can't believe. So that's exactly what they did. From October through April, we hired 4 C-level execs that I would never known how to hire, and they've done a great. Now, I was in the process, so it had to meet my criteria first and their criteria second, not the other way around. So I had to like them, trust them, have them feel a good fit. And they were they asked me, what do you need? What do you want? So we got a chief development officer, Eric, who used to be at Sky Zone and Tijuana Flats and a bunch before. It's not only what he knows, it's the experience he has and who he knows. We just hired on a CMO who was Papa John's Pizza from 400 units to 5,000 units. She was with them. She took them there. So she just got hired on about 6 weeks ago. We have a VP of Finance who will be, within a year from now, he'll be graduated to CFO. Great guy, fits right in, smart technically as well as financially smart. Who else do we got? We hired a real estate guy that knows anybody and everybody. He was also from Sky Zone previously. And then another girl, Victoria, who's a business development person that's going to be doing sales and conversions of stores. And these people all know people in the fast and casual. Which, by the way, fast and casual, I always looked at it. Why do people buy that? The profit is so low. It's so expensive to open up. It's so risky. They make money, and it's good if you buy 100 of them. But like our business model makes 25-30% gross of net of profit. Like, why would you go for a company that's going to open 8, 10, 12%, 15 at best, and spend 4 times more money than so I'd always. Now, again, automotive is a unique business, and people don't know it unless you've been in it. And there's a couple little copycats that came along the way, they try, they flutter out, because I've been in this my whole life. So like I know all the players in the automotive space. I know every in and out of the industry. I've set up Tint World to be multiple categories of services like I did with with Meineke. So all the things that I've learned, I just took into this business model that is very unique. And you can't do this with 40 years of knowledge and try to just flip something and I'll copy that. It's not easy. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's not likely. So we're at the level now where we're actually starting to get the bigger players in, people that are owning McDonald's wanting to buy, people that are owning other types of businesses that want to come in because they see fun, profitable, unique business model that grows quickly, and they could be really good at it. And that's kind of what we're doing right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I saw the FTD, and I think the average, EBITDA is like 170K, and then, even the top performers are doing like a multiple higher than that. And yeah, I mean, the investment, it's, under 700K, I think. So compared to the fast food world, it's night and day
difference. The full
difference.
investment ranges from like 250 to 500, all in. And most of them are lower than that. But, you got to put a high side because you got some people that want bigger stores. But like, 3,000 square foot store, you get it in right, you get it going. Some of these people can do really well. I mean, we have stores doing $2 million. So that is great. And those stores are making ridiculous money. Like the money I made when I was at Meineke. And one of the things that, again, it's fun, profitable, and unique. And then we've got a system behind us with even higher level people now that we're pumping out the sales, the marketing, the operations, the systems. Now we're with our new CMO, she's leveraging partnerships with other brands. A lot of new stuff's to come. Stuff that I thought about and I dream about, but to have the team on that could actually help me facilitate that is just faster growth, and we're looking to take on the bigger players.
Going forward, is there a goal in your mind, whether it's like growing to a certain number of locations open, a system-wide revenue number? Now that you have Susquehanna's helping you build that team, you have the more capital resources behind you. Like what's your North Star, in the next 5 years?
500 units in 5 years. So
okay. And what are you exactly at today?
Just over 150, and we have about 40 in the pipeline under development. So we'll close out close to 200 by the end of the year, I hope. But now that we've got the new development officer in, he's just wrapping his hands on everything with the marketing team. So this year is cleaning up some of the stuff and really setting it up for fast forward growth. And we think we'll either come close or hit that number, and who knows, maybe we'll beat that number. But that'll bring us to a $500 million valuation within 5 years. So that's kind of where we're going. We are building a new headquarters. You might see it over there in the background, a little thing on the wall there. That's just breaking ground this next month. About 7 months, hopefully it'll be up. It'll have on the first floor a training center, a retail center. It'll have on the second floor our corporate offices and marketing systems. And it's like a home in there. It's amazing. And then on the roof, I specially built it strong to have parties on the roof so we can have a little tiki bar so I can lure my franchisees to come and visit. It's all about the fun. Fun, profitable, and unique is what I love.
I love it. All right. Awesome, man. Well, my closing question for every guest is, what person has played a big part of your success in life, but maybe doesn't get the credit that they deserve?
My father is amazing. He made me feel and believe that anything I can put my mind to, I can achieve it. And I also always wanted to make him and my mom proud. So that would be first. But along the way, I've had different, I would have to take you another level, but I had somebody who taught me how to do real estate investment. I didn't know how to do that. I wanted to do it. I told you a little bit. I learned that I had a customer that I helped him out with a car. Guy, he took the college route. I took the building business route. He needed help on his old Saab. It was very expensive. I don't have the money. I got these loans. I'm working with all these big players out in Miami building these big buildings, but I don't have that money. I helped him out once. His name is Howard. Then another time he came back out. Do me a favor. When you got a problem with your car, please go to a competitor. This is when I was at Meineke. Finally, after I helped him again, a couple months later, he pulls up. I go, oh, what does he want now? He goes, Charles, I just wanted to take you out to lunch. I go, really? He said, I wanted to thank you for all you do for me. He goes, I'm sending a lot of my guys. I said, I know. I see them all coming in. He goes, but let me ask you, how come you don't own these properties? I said, Howard, I do want to own the property. I said, I just opened my third store to be able to save money to do that. I just don't know exactly how to do it. He goes, how about if I help you? He goes, I'm going to come on Saturday and help you find a location. So he gave me the wherewithal to find real estate, work with the bank on a 504 loan, SBA loan, to buy property and build my franchise, the first one, because I helped someone. You know, I helped him and didn't expect anything back, but it came back to me. And then I opened up one of my stores, and the president of the bank, of SunTrust Bank, opened up a bank right next to one of my biggest stores. He loved cars. He thought I was so cool. My business model was what Meineke was called at the time, but I also had a co-brand of Tint World in there. So what does he do before that? He basically tells me, come up to my office. I want to talk to you. He goes, do you have a succession plan? Do you have a will and a trust? I go, no. He goes, let me help you with that. He helped me set all that up. And then another guy helped me do real estate investing into townhome. And I started doing that. That's during the time that I stopped building stores. And then when I went into franchising, the guys at Meineke talked to me. The old C-level execs that sold after they raw capital bought them, they left and did other things. I was dealing with the CFO. I was dealing with the COOs, one of the operations managers that was working for a training institute. I mean, I spoke to these guys and they gave me really good insight of how to do it. I sold my last 2 Meineke stores in 2014 while I was building Meineke, and I sold the both of them for $2 million, 1.9 million, you know, to a guy from South America, you know, and the rent was, I was making $500,000 in rental income, you know, just after I sold it. So everything that I did was help other people help me get there, but I was willing to do the hard work. But it costs you nothing to be nice to people, and it comes back tenfold if you do the right thing. Your reputation stays with you forever, so you can't do the wrong thing. And you know, I got out of Brooklyn because I didn't want Tony Montana to come knock on my door with a car stereo shop and pay me. And I wound up coming to Florida paying a franchise every single week, the VIG. But that is so worth it for all the knowledge you get to grow if you take advantage of it. So yes, franchising is dear to my heart, and I love to inspire anybody that wants to build a franchise, whether it's consulting with them on buying something else or whether they want to build their own little empire with Tint World. I love it.
Amazing. Well, I mean, the success speaks for itself, and I think it's clear that you know you've done it the right way. So, yeah, man. I mean, look, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and I know the audience will find this valuable. And yeah, I mean, look, congrats on all your success, and I wouldn't bet against you to hit that 500 unit mark after everything else you've done. So, I look forward to seeing that happen.
Patrick. It's a pleasure being with you and spending some time with you today.